specified show. And so we wanted to take our art to a larger audience.
Hey, Trixie, why don't you come on up there, bro?
I'm just
Come on, Trixie, come on down, man. He thinks more better than me, man. I'm with you on that.
Well, when you get done,
No, I'm done, bro. You next on back. Introduce the Trixie.
congratulations on a great ongoing career.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate it. Appreciate it, man.
Greetings, everyone. Glad to be here today. Thank you, Nathan, and the Cultural Center, and all those in attendance today. My name is Trickster. I've been a graffiti artist for, we got to be close to 32, 33 years. 34 years. So I've been doing it quite a long time. I originally hail from the west side of Chicago. When I started initially, there wasn't a very large following. Initially, there was a select few of individuals who pretty much pioneered and founded the movement in Chicago. I was part of that movement, and me and some of the fellow members of my crew, we single-handedly, as a crew, just went out and took the movement as a whole and conglomerated it into a master group. And we pretty much took the concept of corporate structuring and structured our crew as such. And each crew had divisions or an area where they were from and where they frequented, and they tended to focus in those areas. A lot of the times there was a lot of, we did have different levels of artists and stuff like that. So some artists who were just starting. When you first start, you start out tagging, writing, and doing your names and things like that. That's still a core function. That's still a core aspect of it. But as you go and you become more involved in the artistic aspects of it, it's required that you do excel and change your art form and your style and what have you. But your original aspect of tagging and stuff, you still always hold dear and true to that. Again, like I said, I came from Chicago. I was from the west side of Chicago. I started going to high school up north at Lane Tech High School, and that was my first introduction into the mainstream aspects on a larger scale throughout the city. Because being from the west side, I traveled and ventured out to different areas, but as I was young, I was like 11, 12, we started dancing. So when we started dancing, b-boying, breakdancing, things like that, we were innovating at that time as well with that as well. So as I started going to high school, I started interacting with different culture and different environment and a multiplex of people on the north and the south sides. So that, from there, I started innovating in the art form itself, started doing larger works, and started putting large-scale murals on all sides of the town, and that's what our crew became famous for. Well, after the first heyday, I could say we call it the golden age of hip-hop in Chicago, and I think that pretty much was from the early 80s to right around the end of the late 80s, like right about 90 or so. So that was considered the golden era of hip-hop. And as I come to grow and develop as an artist, I ventured out and started doing other types of activities that were relative to mainstream society and being, quote unquote, a productive model citizen, what have you. And I started developing my art in other forms, and inventive pursuits, working in the automotive industries, in the textile industries early on. But what I want to say today, really though, is I think as we've all heard these terms and these buzzwords and cliches like the writing's on the wall, and you think of it being a sign of the times. So what's more important, I think, to emphasize at this point as we have this medium to express, and the whole concept of the graffiti phenomenon was, you should be aware that it was a youth-derived culture for you. It wasn't like the adults or what have you ascribed or assigned this activity to us per se. It was all youth-derived, and in a place where there wasn't a lot of activities or a lot of people didn't have money to do certain things, it was a way to have membership comes privileges. So all of the artists started getting together in a collective sense, to come together, to have fun, to be expressive, and to share with one another different aspects of creativity. One thing that I do want to say, as this is a sign of the times, that the whole aspect of it is the concept of it being illegal or being in private, certain types of property. But all those things do come into play at some point. But initially, I challenge you to look at it another way. And that way would be that graffiti and writing in public spaces, since times of antiquity to now, preceded property ownership. You hear me? Writing and painting in public spaces preceded property ownership by 30,000, 40,000 years ago. So that, and we go on, as we go on, I hope that point will ring at some point, and it'll make sense to you, some of you at some point. Another thing I think that Static touched on was that the art we do is reflective of the times we're in. Right now, they say we are living in a knowledge economy, right? In an information age. So our art is reflective of that. Technology, computers, information, computer programming. Our art reflects on the work itself. And I think that's an important point also to keep in mind as we go on. There have been no new art forms since the emergence of this dynamic form. It's dynamic in that it encompasses and takes all other genres of art forms and puts them together collectively, as a whole, into a dynamic form. Graffiti art, as we've seen, certain artists have ventured in taking their work into other genres or other mediums, and it's excelling, it's looking great, the sculpture medium. So all those mediums that we've been looking for and working towards is now coming into fruition. Now, I think the time as artists, as practitioners of the art form, we need to be mindful of this, as we noticed how most other art forms or genres of art form have since subsided or subsided or are just being practiced in small nostalgic circles. As we see, like here at Chicago's own Art Institute, the first thing they start you out is drawing, the table with the apple on the table and all these things to get the basic concept of structure of how artistic forms are created or designed or what have you. So it's up to us to really put forth the effort to express ourselves, but at the same time to create a new era, a new genre for our art form. Because as we know, a lot of art forms, they reach a pinnacle and then they level out and then they fall off. Like Impressionism, Cubism, all these art forms are still practiced, but the dynamism in art form has been encompassed in using all of those as well. That's why I say that there hasn't been any new significant movements. There's been a few movements, abstract color fields, different things like that in the art world. But the reason I'm saying this is because we're just starting to get our form recognized more readily. And we have been juxtaposed with outsider art. If anyone is familiar with outsider art and the challenges they went through in the art world, the mainstream art world, to get their art recognized in galleries. So the challenges they went through, the challenges we went through, there were certain points at key times in the development of the graffiti movement that art was readily accepted and seen in the gallery, but it was in the gallery, but it was short-lived though. Because some people still, to this day, contemplate as graffiti as an art form. And it's mind-boggling to me today that still exists in the advent of what we've done, what we've seen, and what we're aware of what we can do with this art form. Before we close, or before I allow the next speaker, I think it's up to us as artists to create a new market for what our work can do. It can address any area of society, be it programming, because a lot of people are not aware. A lot of people say, oh, we can't read it, we can't do this, or it's illegible. But that's akin to, like I say, the information age and how we are cryptic with certain types of security systems and dealing with technology and knowing how the language has to be, disassembled and reassembled in different ways. So we reflect this, again, this principle of the information age.